Okay, welcome to BFS Wargaming. We're going to do another Warhammer chatter. So I'm here with John and Neil, and we're going to have a general chat about Warhammer, some of the things that are going on at the moment. And because we are in October, we're going to talk about some orcs.
Sorry, what month are we in?
October.
That's better.
So, John is our resident orc player, along with Ollie. So, what are your feelings so far, John, about the orc release?
Well, so far, October itself as a month has been a bit disappointing, really, isn't it? And everything's happening sort of pretty much in November now, codex-wise and all that. But, that being said, the new buggies, they look pretty fun. And some of the leaks that have come out for a few of them look quite useful.
Yeah, I think there's one that can, jump around the field, the battlefield, can't it?
Yeah, is it the shock jump dragster?
Yeah.
The Bad Moon one.
Is it when you advance and you roll over a 4 or something?
I believe so,
Mortal wound, yeah?
No, it's where you basically, if you roll over a 4 on your advance, you can then jump him anywhere on the field 9 inches away from enemy troops.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that. That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah,
Really
it's quite good.
Quite fun.
Yeah, and then you've got the old squig buggy, which you can drop mines, fire squigs at people and things like that.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how it works. I don't know if it's like the Biovores where you can set up squigs around people. Is that how?
I'm not entirely sure. I think there's a bit of that. There's people saying you can sort of almost fire them, so you could fire it towards an objective, and it's there. Should anyone go onto that objective, that squig would then
explode,
popping off your trot, sort of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's another one that's allegedly you charge, and on the charge, if you get in, D3 mortal wounds straight off the bat.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, which is really good. Mortal wounds on charges is amazing, especially really if you look at the vehicles at the moment. I mean, I don't think there's any vehicles that do mortal wounds on a charge. Is there really?
Well,
I can't think of any.
Not vehicles particularly, but carnifexes.
Okay, yeah, your big
stuff
bugs.
like that, big bugs.
Yeah, there's a few things that I just, if you look at most of the Imperium bit, the Rhino used to have the what was it?
Like the spikes, not dozer blade, but that sort of thing. Yeah.
It used to have that on the front, and that used to do something, didn't it, when it charged?
It makes sense though, doesn't it? If you got a tank running into you, it makes sense to give you mortal wounds. Doesn't it, really?
Definitely.
So.
And isn't there on that the orc vehicle that does that? I can't remember the name of it, but doesn't it have this big churning wheel on the front of it?
That's the battle wagon that has that. That's the battle wagon with the.
But I think there's another one that's got either blades or something on it. But I know the battle wagon's got the big churny thing. I wonder if that's gonna have rules for mortal wounds on it. Could do.
Could well do. And there's a lot going to be changing, isn't there, by the looks of things? So.
And it looks like now you can really do a speed war.
I think they've made it more viable. I don't think the vehicles previously were particularly good, were they?
No, the old buggy in the war track.
Awful.
I had the war track from 20 years ago.
Yeah.
When I came back into the hobby, I had that, the first Gazgul. Mm-hmm. Do you remember that there was a Gretchen? I think it was called Macquarie.
He had the little flag bearer.
Yeah. He used to be a lucky mascot for Gazgul, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I always remember that he had the rule Gazgul where you could have adamantium skull, where you could basically headbutt a rhino. it was quite cool.
Yeah.
But apparently Gazgul, from other rumours we've heard on Facebook and other places, apparently Gazgul, you could turn Gazgul into a bit of a beast. It's saying a bit of a night killer. Wounding and hitting and wounding knights on 2s. You can make him strength 16, 10 attacks. I don't know what damage. I'm just imagining it would probably be D6 or straight 3 or anything like that. But whatever it is, it's going to be... I mean, if it was straight 3 and all 10 went through, that's 30 damage on 10 attacks. It's a lot of damage.
Mortarion.
Yeah.
Smash attack.
Well, I mean, orcs need something to be able to take on a Primarch, a Demon Primarch, really. What else have they got that could really hit a Primarch and hurt it, other than Gazgul?
But what we've got to remember, orcs aren't a regimented outfit, are they? They're not.
They're a mob.
They're a mob.
They're a mob.
Yeah.
They're a bunch
they're
of
the
buffoons
epitome of
with a bunch
horde
of
army,
guns
aren't they?
in green, loads of dancing, loads of armour all over them. But the problem is, they're not going to be we still need to have that aspect of like a randomisation of what they can achieve when they attack. So for the likes of the obliterators, for example, you know, the rolling for the strength, the AP, and the actual damage, you know, something it would be nice to see something similar introduced more often from an Orks perspective. You know, don't get me wrong, there's potential for them to flop, and there's also potential for them to do
a lot of damage. Yeah, no, I agree, and because I always remember again back a lot of years ago when I played some Orks.
Back in the day.
There was the shock attack gun, which was very random. That could like either blow you up or it could do some serious damage.
Yeah, bubble chucker recently was similar. You basically roll for what stat is what as you're going through it.
So they do have those things which are a bit random. I think from the sounds of it, this squig buggy is going to be a bit random. So there is some randomised stuff in there, but I suppose you can't make too much random, otherwise, like it would be.
There's
just
a big risk of it being a problem. There's not being what it needs to be.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a few of the stats for the squig bucket if you can make that out of some of the weapons.
Yeah, so
I think that from what I've seen so far, a lot of the weapons are becoming higher strength. So I found previously a lot of the stuff, even if you hit it, I mean, it's hard enough to hit index at the moment with Orks. But when you are hitting, there wasn't a lot with high strength to the weapons. You were struggling.
I mean, like one of these wounds on a 4 unless you're firing at a vehicle or Titanic unit, in which case it wounds on a 6. But I mean, that squig buggy's got quite a few different profiles you can shoot on. I love how they've just got like shotguns in there because it's just someone hanging out the window firing a shotgun.
One of them's got another one of the buggies has got not a squig gunner, sorry, a grot gunner, which gives him ballistic skill of 3, so you're hitting on 3s pretty reliably, which for Orks is great, isn't it?
There's another one where it's basically you're throwing Molotov cocktails out the window. That's amazing. I love that. Just that image, because I think they're actually modelled with them as well.
Yeah.
That image of like these Orks just running along, that's very Mad Max-ish as well, isn't it?
It sounds Ork-like sort of fluff-wise, doesn't it, as well? It sort of fits the fluff.
Yeah, definitely. It's just that sort of...
You mentioned Mad Max.
Yeah.
Personally, for me, you know, and what I remember on what I believe to be Orks and how they're modelled, I think they've crossed the line a little bit on the way they've modelled the actual new buggies. I don't think they tend, like, correct me if I'm wrong, this is only my opinion, but I do feel they've gone away from, you know, the classic Gorka Morka buggies and war tracks and stuff like that, where, yes, I know it's the 41st millennia, but does it really fit in with having some, you know, old metal dragster vehicle?
Yeah, the shock jump dragster looks a bit clean.
Yes,
exactly.
That's
I think I'd prefer to be putting some, like, sort of modelling some panels and things like that, and just make it look a bit more ramshackle like the old truck was even.
Exactly, yeah, and that's how I feel like you look at them and you think, have Orks made this? Because it looks a bit too clean, a little bit too well put together almost. And it should almost be a little bit more randomised, a little bit more battered. They shouldn't look like racing cars, you know?
Like looted vehicles.
Yeah.
So, for example, I don't know if there are any rules in the index or codex for that matter.
Nothing in the index.
For a looted vehicle. So say for example they loot a Lehman Ross, you build it up like a Lehman Ross. It has the potential of a standard Lehman Ross, obviously minus the ballistic skill and certain criteria and stats. Then, you know,
which I think is a great idea, and it then allows people to take models, to kit bash them themselves, make them look orkish, but it seems that
it's not.
It seems strange because you would have thought it'd be good for GW because they'd be selling models they already have,
multiple kits, right?
Yeah, they'd be selling all these kits they already have, so there's less work for them.
Yeah.
More work for the hobbyists, but hobbyists like kit bashing. Yeah. They like making things their own, which you can do that then, and then all they've got to do is make a data sheet for it.
Yeah.
Easy as that.
Yeah.
This is a data sheet for a kit bash Lehman Russ or Lehman Russ. Like bang, this is a kit like, but maybe
some of the best looking Ork armies out there, well, which have been featured on the internet for good reasons, are those that have been kit bashed. Like you look at that Bad Moon Necron Croissant that's been converted into a flyer for the Orks. You know, that for me is just hobby level minus. You know,
it's amazing.
It's just
off the charts.
Off the charts. It's literally off the charts. You know, it's
and then like the orc was it an orc? Was it an orc knight they converted?
Yeah, I think I've seen it. I've seen a night where it was sort of orked up. Yeah, lots of. Again, I think it was Bad Moon again.
Yeah,
that kind of fits the fluff. They got the most teeth, haven't they? So they've got the most put into it. But they look. Some of the stuff looks ridiculously good.
Have any of the clan rules been leaked yet?
Yeah, there is some. There's
the goths culture. They're called cultures.
Cultures.
Yeah,
with a K.
Yeah, with a K, obviously.
Okay. Culture.
So the goth one is basically Death to the False Emperor in the fight phase. So 6s generate more hits.
Yeah.
So you have to then roll them.
Fight phase. Yeah.
Fight phase. Yeah, because obviously they get Daka army wide, which is that happens. On a 6 in the shooting phase anyway. And then with that Daka is 6s are always a hit. So if you're going up against Eldar and you've got...
keep it to Daka rule.
Maybe. Yeah, okay, Daka rule. I can't keep saying Daka.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so the Daka rule always hitting on 6s, which is fair for Orks, because you can't be going up against Eldar and then not being able to shoot them.
Well, me and John actually test run the Daka rule.
Forgot it a few times in the game, but it made a difference, definitely.
But it did make a little difference, but it wasn't game-changing, was it?
No. I think you pair that with what's being rumoured in the Codex in sort of always hitting on 6s and some of the other...
That's actually come out, it is always.
And a few of the other rules going in there. And like I said, the fact some of the weapons are getting stronger as well. I think you'll find that rule is going to be not so much game-changing still, but I think it'll have more of an effect.
And the rumour, or I think it might have been released by GW, but it's hard to remember what's rumour and what's actually been released so far. But like the Morkanaut 3d6 gun, can't remember which gun it is, has now been changed to 18 shots. So that's maximum, and that's massive.
Yeah, well, 3d6 could be 3, right?
Exactly.
But obviously you've got to account for the number you're going to lose in some wound
when you're hitting on 5s, it's...
Ollie's tournament list.
Yeah.
That struggled. It was Stomper, Morkanaut,
Killer Cans, Deathcopter.
Yeah.
That was one thing I was surprised about. They haven't released the Deathcopters models because you can't you only get them in a certain box set?
They were in the Assault and Black Reach, I think,
Assault and Black Reach.
Yeah.
You could get them in the Revel build and paint kits as well.
Okay, but they don't actually sell them on GW Sword, do they?
No.
And that's something...
Will they take them out of the Codex?
Remains to be seen. Could well be the case.
Because if they haven't got a model that they're selling, and that's generally how they've been with the Codexes so far, usually, if they haven't got a model, like apparently you're not going to get...
Lobbers.
You're not going to get lobbers and those things, and you're not going to get an Ork on bike, but you have got obviously the Ork on trike, which is fine. But they're not giving you the war boss on bike because there's not a model for it. So they're
Forge World, though, is there?
I'm
sure there's
there is a Forge World.
But if it was in Forge World, it wouldn't be in the Codex, would it?
No,
because it has separate rules for it. So it sort of seems that they're taking the things out, but there is a model for the Deathcopter. It's just not sold, so it's a bit of a weird one.
But it hasn't been given the opportunity to sell.
No, which is very strange. Because they've made the model, why not put it out?
You do hear of people who've bought multiple boxes of the Black Reach set on the back of just getting those Deathcopters.
I know at least one person who, when all those Revel kits recently came out cheaply, smashed a load of them, got a load of them out there. I think got about 6 of the Deathcopter kits, purely because that's the easiest way to buy them, and they were down at $5.99 or something, which is pretty cheap for any model. GW. But
no, I think it'll be interesting to see if they're on the Codex. I hope they are, because it gives the thing is, they might say, they don't really need the mobility because now they've got all these new vehicles, so we can take the Deathcopters out.
Okay, so they've brought out all these new vehicles, but what they brought out, this new workbench?
Yes.
The Mech Workshop.
Right?
Yeah.
So what is that going to encourage? How is that going to, you feel that going to come into play?
So I know that one of the things they can do is if you're next to it, within 1 inch of it, and someone charges you, you can then, on a 4-up, I think it is, basically use this claw and swing a claw into them and do, I think it's D3 mortal wounds.
It is D3, yeah.
So that's pretty cool. I mean, I don't know how much that's going to come into effect, especially because you're going to be putting it in your deployment zone. I mean, it's very situational. So you're going to put it in your deployment zone, but naturally orcs are all going to advance up the field. And
Well, you're going to be using the jump. You're going to be using whatever you can to get things up the battlefield as quickly.
So
as
the only
possible.
time,
And this mech shop cannot be moved.
No,
it just becomes terrain.
So it's a Nurgle tree, right?
Yeah. So the only time I can see it come into effect is if you've got something in deep strike that you then deep strike behind the orc lines and then go and attack something that's near the workshop.
Or is it going to encourage castling?
Yeah, well, I think it will if you've got stuff like, for instance, one of the rules is that you can, if you're within one, I think it's within 1 inch of it, you get custom job and you can then fire at your full profile. So say if something's 2d6 shots, you can then fire it at 12 shots, which if you have something that has that, you then naturally you're going to keep it near that because you're just going to think, well, I'm hitting on 5s. I could roll either, I could get 2 shots or I can get a guaranteed 12. So you're sort of going to want to keep it near that custom.
Mech guns, things like that. You might have sort of a mech gun battery sort of surrounding it or around it potentially. That
what
might be
are
a
mech
way
guns?
people are going. Mech guns are going to be things that they're the big guns essentially. What's available as big guns now,
Right.
So
Because they've got rid of all the lobbers and the artillery.
lobbers. They're like, I think one of the mech guns is a bubble chucker. I think, which as I said earlier, that's a fairly random sort of weapon profile in the index. But I mean, I can't remember what all the names of them are because I haven't got any myself. I don't use them because they've been pretty irrelevant and they're expensive models as well.
Yeah. So it's I think it's going to be something that is quite cool. I'm not sure how much it's going to come into, how much benefit it's going to give your army. I'm not
narrative
100%
play.
Sure.
I think I would be quite tempted to use it in a more narrative sort of campaign style setting. But I think in a competitive army list, it's a waste of points for me.
Yeah, because I mean,
even with what's just been leaked so far as what we think we know about
it's very hard because I think it depends how you're going to play your army. Because are you going to have a couple of things like maybe you've got a couple of, let's say, this is for you, for instance, let's say Morganauts, and they're sitting at the back and they sit by this custom shop, and they can hit top profile with everything. Like, because we don't know the profiles of the weapons in a minute, but they can. So you could just leave them 2 next to it, and it'd be probably worth the 80 to 100 points that the shop costs, and then you've got everything else pushing up. You know, maybe that's worth it, but maybe you want your Morkanaut up there to get that into combat as well. So I don't know. It depends how you're going to play your army. I suppose.
For me, as an Orc player, the way you want to play him is to get him into combat as quickly as possible. You want to have the fun, and you've got access to the jump. You got access to this shock attack buggy, which can essentially deep strike, but because it's on the board, it doesn't suffer any of the deep strike.
So you can do it turn
Could it
1.
potentially enhance the mech boys within the army?
It does allow you to mech boys if they haven't used if they haven't healed anything. Mechniac, I think.
Yeah.
They can essentially, you can get D3 wounds back just straight off the workshop.
Isn't it straight 3 wounds?
No, yes, it is straight 3.
Instead of
It's
D3.
standard D3, right?
But then what else? I mean, you've got the other one that looks really interesting to me is the teleporter pad.
Yes, the stratagem.
Yeah, the stratagem. Is it 1 or 2 command? I can't
2
remember.
command points, which does seem quite expensive.
But you've got 20 power level.
Yeah.
Now, we're yet to see points costs, but 20 power level, which hasn't seemingly been said it's purely infantry or it's this, that...
No, it's just anything under 20 under.
Does that mean you can take a Morkanaut and deep strike a Morka or Gorkanaut potentially?
Yeah, I would assume so. If they're under 20 power level, yeah.
Which is probably quite likely, isn't it?
Yeah, which is quite cool.
Given the current rules...
Deep strike rules,
turn 2...
Are you missing out on a shooting from a Morkanaut for a turn? Do you want to do that? You know?
I suppose, but that's been there's so much that we don't know about the Orc Codex that it's difficult to say. I mean, if you can tarp it down a lot of enemies in that first turn, with boys using the jump, buggies using their various things, you've got the ability to tie up some pretty hefty opponents. The other one where you can, for a 1 command point, you can up their strength characteristic by 1 from 4 to 5.
Yeah.
And that's on a whole unit. For 1 command,
and that lasts for the whole battle.
Whole battle, and you can use it multiple times. So if you're running 3 blobs of 30 boys,
and then you give them all
strength 5,
that they're then wounding most things on 3s.
That's it.
Or most infantry on 3s.
That is, for me, more of a game changer than the
teleporter. And the teleporter.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think it's really, really good.
The teleporter's good for me because if you've got an expensive unit at the moment, for instance, like they've suggested in the Warhammer community post on it, about 10 meganobs with kill saws.
Yeah.
They've suggested that, so that's clearly going to be under 20 power
level.
At the moment, it's a bit of a squishy unit. You'll lose them if you try and foot stomp them up the field.
Yeah.
You even struggle potentially to get them into combat generally at the moment because they're such a target because people know they're tough. But if you can use the teleporter pad, get them up there, and they've got Here We Go is still a thing, so that's still re-rolling 1 or both dice on the charge for pretty much anything in the Orc army because they pretty much all have it. I think that's probably the use I would use it for, is getting an expensive unit like Meganobs into combat. You don't want them on the table to take the fire for the first turn.
Yeah, and I suppose the same with the Morkanaut as well. If you go second, I mean, they can't shoot. There's 2 rounds of shooting they can't have at your Morkanaut. That means it's,
survivability goes up straight away, doesn't it? Because it's not there to get shot.
And that may mean that some of the stuff that they can shoot at the Morkanaut that's really going to do some damage to the Morkanaut, you might have had a chance to either tie up or take some wounds down. It's not shooting on the top tier, so your Morkanaut has more survivability. So there is obviously that to it. I think it's good. Is there any? Go on.
But what I want to know from this codex, right? Don't get me wrong, when the Tyranids Codex came out, there was more than just your one type of way to play the army, right?
Yeah.
They had a shooting criteria, they had a,
close combat.
That's their go-to usually. Yeah. But, they were a quite balanced codex, whereas what I hope to come from the Orks Codex is the same, really. So not only, I know historically Legacy, they're not known for their shooting, but it would be nice to see
them be able to compete.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right? Not just on one front.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, what you don't want, I think, from any kind the Tyranids is a really good example, and the Drukhari is a very good example. They're 2 codexes you can play in multiple different ways: shooting, close combat. You could do a bit of both. You could focus on one or the other, and that's exactly right. You don't want to have to play, which is what I mean. I think as an index army, there is the only way people have really played them is the Green Tide, isn't it? Just as many Orc boys as you can, and try and hold some objectives.
It's boys and buffs at the moment. It's literally just mobs of boys with Pain boys with wire banners, with custom force fields.
Weird boy with the jump.
Yeah, that is the way to play Orcs with the index, and they still can fall apart. If you don't get the luck of the rolls, you can still lose a lot and not really be very influential. And they're not tough in combat at the moment. They're not tough enough for me.
Yeah. And I think, when you've got... There is armies out there that just aren't meant to be played a certain way. Like Admech are a gunline army. There is a couple of units that are all right in close combat. Like the priests and the... What them chicken thing called? Them chickens?
Oh, what are they called?
Something... Is it stalkers?
No, Dustwalkers.
I don't know, something like that.
Skinny...
Yeah, chicken things. All the Admech players again. What are they going on about?
What are you talking about?
That goes back to the recent FAQ release, right? The FAQs encourage that type of play even more, so it's kind of discouraged
the close combat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What they did have, your electro.
It's kind of been a mark of this
because
edition,
they've stopped the infiltrate rule, haven't they? Or they've really nerfed the infiltrate rule for pretty much every army, where you can't. So you can only get 9 inches outside of your deployment zone. And I mean, don't get me wrong, that could still be quite good in certain deployments on certain maps, but it is a bit of a shame, especially how much they've nerfed the first turn deep strike anyway, which I'm not completely against. I do think the way they've gone in 8th edition is, since they started, they've just done nerf after nerf after nerf to close combat armies.
And Marines.
Well, Marines haven't really been nerfed, they were just bad.
Never been good. Yeah.
The Marines are just not good at the moment. And, that brings us on. Well, let's talk about Marines. I mean, there needs to be something either in chapter approved or very close after to help Marines out. Like, I don't think they're, from what people are saying, I don't think they're going to be doing another Space Marine Codex. But I mean, if you look at all of their vehicles, and I know a lot of them are toughness 7, toughness 8, but none of them have got an invuln, and it's just so easy to take them out. I mean, even today, me and Neil had a game, and I took out a repulsor with one unit of 3 obliterators. I did fire with them twice with the Slanesh stratagem, but that repulsor, 16 wounds, toughness 8, I took it out in one turn. One turn, that was gone. The 5 men inside, he then had to roll. In fact, he exploded, didn't it?
Yeah,
he exploded.
He did.
And he command pointed it, and it still exploded. So he rolled a 6 again, and then so he done D6 more. But that's besides the point, really. But then he had to roll for the guys inside. One of them died, and you just think there's no, like. Don't get me wrong. If it had a 5-up invuln against shooting, it just gives it that chance of survivability for one extra turn. I just don't feel like 3 obliterators should be taking out a repulsor in one. And don't get me wrong, it shot twice, but that was the only thing that shot at it. So
it does seem weak, doesn't it? If that's the case, I mean, that's a pretty sort of fluke situation. It won't happen very often. You won't lose one like that for one turn's worth of shooting very regularly. I wouldn't have thought, but
I don't know, because if you think I had a Predator and a Hellbrute on the table as well. I didn't shoot the Predator and the Hellbrute at it at all.
I suppose.
So imagine if I'd shot the Predator, the Hellbrute, and an Obliterator squad at it, which is quite easy. I mean, don't get me wrong, you could still take it out on that turn with those 3, because that's a lot of firepower. But at least it would have more chance of surviving if you get a couple of 5-up invuln saves. That might be a couple of las cannon shots used to survive.
Yeah.
And I mean, don't get me wrong, it had a 6-up save against most of the shooting anyway, because it's -3 and it's a 3-up save. I mean, even if
is there any like Space Marine? I'm not really that sort of knowledgeable about Space Marines this edition, but is there any faction which gets feel no pain across the an army by feel no pain?
Iron Hands.
Iron Hands. So, I mean, Iron Hands potentially would that apply to the vehicles as well, presumably, like Army Wide?
I don't know if it applies to the vehicles.
Don't know if it applies to the vehicles, but I'm definitely sure it applies to the infantry.
But yeah, and I mean, don't get me wrong, that would be good, and that's definitely.
You almost want the equivalent of a custom force field, don't you? For the Orks, you want something. At least then you get taxed. You get taxed for it, so people couldn't complain. They're too strong because. But they this, that, the other.
Currently, a Land Raider is not far off the same points, or is around roughly the same points as some knights. It may have a little bit more. It may have the ability to move stuff about, but other than that, as in transport troops, but other than that, like, it hasn't got any close combat, which knights have, and knights have got the 5-up invuln against shooting, which does help. It does help with survivability. It's like the Drukhari vehicles, they've got a 5-up invuln.
It's like all of the Harlequins with a 4-up invuln.
Yeah.
Army wide, pretty much, isn't it?
But then Harlequins, I feel, need that because Harlequins haven't got a lot.
They are, yeah.
But then, with the 5-up invuln on the Drukhari, and then you give them Kabula the Blackheart, and they get 6-up feel no pain as well, that makes them a lot more durable.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'd prefer to have a Drukhari Raider than, don't get me wrong, you could get 2 Drukhari Raiders for the same, easily, well under the price of a Land Raider. In fact, you could probably almost get 3 Ravagers, for the price of a
So what we're saying, a Land Raider is how much roughly?
About 350.
You're probably not far off getting 3 Wave Serpents.
Yeah, exactly.
Serpent shields reducing damage and...
Again, and they can transport.
They can transport, what, 10, 12 I think it is? Can't remember exactly off the top of my head now.
Yeah, and how many wounds have they got? Is it 14?
I think it's 14. I think it's 14.
And they have the old Serpent Shield.
Serpent Shield reducing damage by 1.
Yeah. And do they have a 6 up for no pain, or you can give them a 6 up?
Well, you can run them as Ulthway.
Oh, yeah,
get
give them 6 up no
Or,
pain.
I mean, the ideal one that everyone wants to run them as is Alatok, where you get a -1 to hit outside 12.
Yeah. Which makes them far more durable. And don't get me wrong, they're probably only toughness 6.
But that goes to another argument, right? The minuses to hit.
Yeah.
That needs to be addressed because, you know,
It's really strong.
it's quite a contentious. It's quite a contentious issue across the board. Whereas you do get the likes of, you know, a lot of Eldar units or Dark Eldar units have the ability to increase that to -2.
Hemlocks, for instance.
Yeah,
Hemlocks are -1 because they're a flyer.
You can
-1
make
because they're Alatok, and you can put -1 for lightning fast reactions.
that's -3 to hit.
So
Right?
the best generally you're going to get to hit is most time it's 3s.
Yeah.
Generally, so you're looking at 6s for a good shooting army.
Yeah.
That's tough.
I mean, and I don't, because you're not going to have that on them every round, but, well, you'd be spending all your command points on if you did. But what I'm saying is, I don't think that it's horrendous, the -1 to hit, because I think there's a lot of things you can do to get round it. Like, you know, for instance, if you've got a Death Watchmaster, you can re-roll every hit, or Gilliman. There's a lot of re-rolling ones.
Yeah, but there's not all armies, and well, that's just encouraging gun lines, right? We want to kind of create an environment where people feel they don't necessarily have to have a close combat or a gunline army. Have a bit of both, you know.
Yeah, but then if you have a bit of both with the close combat, you usually most it's like terms with close combat, you're not getting any -1 to hit because you'll be inside the 12 inches. You'll be, if you can fly, you'll be close combat on the flyer, so it won't get the -1 to hit anymore. Mm-hmm. So the only thing that you will then get -1 to hit is from lightning fast reactions or reflexes.
So you're playing a Dark Eldar army, for example, right?
Yeah.
They've got the ability to be a gunline as well as the -1s and the multiples to hit, right?
Yeah.
So where do you sit when you're facing an army like that?
It's more difficult, but then it's one of those things where you shoot at a Razor Wing, for instance. He does, or they do, lightning fast reflexes, and then you shoot at anything else because you just have to avoid that for that turn, and that's the point.
And you can't play that strategy over and over.
No, you can only play it once per turn.
So do you think they should look to address the literally a maximum requirement in order to hit? So they have it for the wounds, so dependent on the strength and the toughness of the target. So whether my strength 2 gun is shooting into a toughness 6 target, I can always guaranteed I'm going to hit it on a 6, wound it on a 6.
I just think they should, in the same way they've done sort of
you do always wound on a
saves.
6. You mean hit on a 6? Yeah.
Do you always hit on a 6?
No, you don't, unless you're Orks
exactly.
now.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I 100% agree. You should always hit on a 6.
Always hit on a 6.
I think the same as you always wound on a 6, you should always hit on a 6.
Agreed.
I think they should just make that a literally a game-wide rule. They've done it for Orks, and rightly so. And they should just make it a game-wide rule. There's a game-wide rule in Kill Team. All 6 is always a hit. So they should do it, I think, in 40k as well, because there is a lot of minuses to hit out there.
Yeah.
And maybe the way they should balance it is the armies that get those minuses to hit maybe shouldn't get any pluses to hit when they're firing back, whereas you've still got Craftworld who can then put Guide on, which re-rolls all hit to 1 unit.
Or just use Reapers that hit on 3s.
Yeah, always hit on 3s.
You've got an Assassin that can make you hit on 6s, but Reapers will hit on 3s.
Yeah.
No matter what the modifiers.
No.
Yeah.
And it's always brilliant. A 3. The only thing that will stop them is, I believe, their weapons are heavy weapons. So if they move, you're in a position where you're not going to be hit on 3s.
And
essentially, because it will impact you.
And Overwatch.
And Overwatch.
Yeah, they can't Overwatch on 3s.
I mean, the other suggestion about the hard to hit items, like -1s to hits, is that I've heard suggested so far is you've got with invulns, for instance. There's some stratagems and psychic powers and all sorts that can increase or better your invuln save, isn't there? Now, demons have had that changed, haven't they? I think there's something where you can only get to a 4 invuln.
There used to be like a 2-up. You could get to a 2-up, and now it's like most armies are, most abilities and armies and things like that, a maximum 3-up invuln now.
So how about high movement units. So say for example they do get given the -1 to hit. Okay, if they are shot at and they get the -1 to hit, during their next turn, as they dodged or potentially jinked in the previous turn, maybe they get a detriment to the next move.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good, really good idea. Like you say,
it's similar to
maybe
the
if you've,
rule, isn't it?
if you've played, for instance, lightning fast reactions on something and given it -1 to hit, then it should have some negative in the next turn because it's had to dodge, like you say, that shot, right? And it should then, I don't know, reduce its move. It shouldn't be able to turn as much. I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say the -1 to hit is a difficult one because, like, again, in the instance of hemlocks, makes no odds. They're auto hit as long as they're within a certain distance. They're auto hit. So you can't negate that in some instances. I mean, the thing is, you could rewrite the whole rule set to suit a certain model, and then it won't affect another model. So it's difficult. There's always going to be something.
I mean,
that the rules.
Well, the reason we love the game is because it's so complex, isn't it?
You've mentioned it so many times, Pat, over months and months and months, and it goes back to the competitive play and what units are being used, and you know what's the most optimized list, right? And a lot of these units, and that was why I was going back to the NIDS Codex. You could use pretty much 80% of the codex in a competitive list.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas a lot of the codex and armies that are coming out now are, you know, you only get a handful of units that are actually getting purchased and actually being used. And don't get me wrong, that's only one aspect of the hobby, right? The competitive side. Whereas you've got people who play the narrative or just like the models, But
yeah, you're completely right. And, you know, it's not just the competitive side, though, because even if you are just having a fun game, like a normal fun game, you don't want to go into the normal fun game, like, with a handicap. Do you know what I mean? Like, because it doesn't matter whether you're playing a normal fun game or you're having a laugh and rolling some dice. Like, for instance, I played my Doom Scythe against John, and it died first turn, as it normally does, because it's toughness 6, it doesn't have an invuln, doesn't have quantum shielding, and it does have -1 to hit, but John had a hemlock, which was auto-hitting, and destroyed it. But even then, just one -1 to hit on a toughness 6 flyer is not going to keep it alive. That's going to die pretty quickly. And, you know, it's units like that, and you know, it wouldn't matter if that was the only unit in the codex. Like, what you want is to be able to play a variety of units, and whether you're talking competitively or non-competitively, you still don't want to be going to games where you're handicapped because you've taken a flyer that's just not good, or a monolith, for instance, you know, where you know that it's a 381 point model that's probably going to get shot off the table first turn if they've got any big guns, you know. So obviously I'm talking from my point of view because I'm a Necron player, but I think there's plenty of other armies that have this as well, that have got a lot of weak units, like the Drukhari and the Nids. I think of 2 codex that GW have actually got right. They've actually done really well with both of them codexes, because, you know, you can, like you have, Neil, you've taken a lot of different lists to different games and done well with them. You know, it's a testament to the codex that you can swap in and change stuff. Whereas, I mean, if you look at Necrons competitively, for instance, people have been taking Tesseract Vaults, Destroyers, Doomsday Arcs and Wraiths. Like, 4 units shouldn't make a codex, you know? You've got to have more variety and be able to play more than that. Because, and even then, they're taking all of these power units from that codex, and they're still not winning tournaments with them, you know? I mean, it might be the odd local one that's getting one with them, but they're not doing amazingly. And it's the same with, like, for instance, Dreadnoughts for Space Marines. They're just not good. There's something needs to happen, whether it's the price. If you look at a Talos and a Dreadnought, a Talos is it could be up to 80 points cheaper than a Dreadnought.
Yeah.
And it's just, like, ridiculous.
But it goes, like, going back to the Space Marine Codex. Space Marine armies don't consist of Space Marines anymore, or Terminators, for that example.
No, they consist of Scouts.
Consist of Scouts or Primaris Marines, right? Yeah. Space Marines, you know, the lore, the history, the whole business was built around Space Marine and Orks as their nemesis, so to speak. But, you know, why are they now in a position where they're just not getting played? You know, the models are getting slowly but dated. Don't get me wrong, I understand the recent law with Rebut Gilliman and, you know, the Primaris Marines being introduced, but there has to be something to get those units and models back on the board.
Yeah.
For example, like the Terminators, for example, why are they toughness 4?
What worries
Why
me?
are they toughness 4?
Yeah,
Well,
no way
you're
they
going to
shoot
take
toughness
Primaris
4.
over them
They shoot
every day,
toughness
aren't
5.
you?
Yeah.
Over a
But
Terminator.
Why
Yeah, because
Terminator.
they're cheaper.
Yeah.
Loads
Cheaper.
cheaper.
Yeah, but they're effective. They're much more effective.
Yeah.
And if you want, they're meant to be not so much the elite, but for instance, in a Dark Angels army, you got the Deathwing. They are the elite.
Yeah.
The elite Terminator wing of the Dark Angels. No one's ever. I've not seen in 8th edition anyone play a Deathwing list.
Yeah.
The guy, the Glacial Geek, I've seen him play it,
Yeah.
but he didn't. Don't think he done well.
No.
But like the thing is with I think Space Marines, it's this whole Primaris issue, which is one, Primaris still aren't amazing, even if you put them up against like other good codexes. Primaris aren't winning competitions, are they?
No.
You know, and then you've got the fact that it seems like GW want people to buy Primaris, they want people to buy Repulsors instead of buying Land Raiders, instead of buying Space Marines. So are they just going to slowly just make them worse until everyone just buys Primaris and Repulsors and goes Primaris? Are they going to bring out a Primaris Terminator to then just make normal Terminators obsolete?
Well, that's where they've kind of gone with the aggressors type of thing, haven't they?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. And aggressors are
The
toughness
Gravis
5.
armour. But the aggressors are toughness 5. And
Yeah.
I can't see why a Terminator, you know, just by looking at the model and knowing the history and the lore of a
And the
Terminator
armour.
against a Space Marine and the armour,
Yeah.
why the hell is that not a toughness 5?
And I understand that the armour comes to the save and it has got a 2-up save instead of a 3-up save, and it's got a 5-up invon, but that's not enough. Like, you know...
AP mods are huge. This
Yeah,
edition.
there's
Huge.
loads of AP. And I just think, you know, and it's not even that. It's the price you're paying for a Terminator, which they should be a pricey unit because they're an elite unit. So then it goes to the fact that you don't want to see hordes of Terminators. You want to see Terminators get better. You need to see them at toughness 5, 3 wounds, you know? That's what they should be. Like a Terminator, a normal Space Marine Terminator, I think should be in line with a base custodian. You know, not a custodian Terminator, a base custodian, which are strength and toughness 5, you know, 3 wounds. That's what I think a Terminator should be, you know. You've got a normal Space Marine in this massive armour, and it should be...
Tactical dreadnought armour.
Yeah, it should be a beast.
Remind me where the Custo Terminator sits at the moment. Is that 5 and 6?
And that Custo Terminator is still toughness 5, strength 5. They have 4 wounds. I think it's tough. Maybe they're tough. No, I'm pretty sure they're toughness 5 because the bikes are toughness 6. Yeah. So, but they're obviously, and they're hit on 2s. They're saving on 2s, 4-up invon. So you can keep the Terminators, normal Terminators, with the 5-up invon. You know, saving on 2s. They can't be as good as a Laris Terminator.
No, I'm not
obviously,
saying they should, but you know, the toughness for me, given the points value, and I think maybe the toughness would make them playable.
But there's still only
Yeah.
one
Or
wound
an
at the moment,
option,
aren't they?
you know?
Still only one wound though at the moment, aren't they? Terminators, is that
2.
right? 2, are they?
2 wounds.
Yeah, 2 wounds. Yeah, and I mean, you know, if you again, I'll go back to Necrons. If you take Necron Warriors, they're probably going to take out Terminator squad pretty quick. You know, -1 AP, a lot of shots. The Terminator squad's probably not going to be standing because they're wound on 4s. But if they were having to wound on 5s and 6s, that's a lot harder to take out a Terminator squad then.
Exactly. And I think you know, because it's quite regimented, the to hit roll, right?
Yeah.
You know, you've got a lot of 3s and 4s out there. I think that where it comes down to is once you've got the hit, it's the AP and the toughness, right?
Yeah.
So I think that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not sure if they should just up the... It's sort of a hard one, because do they up the toughness of a normal Space Marine, you know, or do they give it... Because at the moment, a normal Space Marine, a bog standard Space Marine needs something done. And again, right, so as you say, let's change the points. Let's lower the points, but then you end up with a lot of Space Marines on the tabletop, and they're meant to be like an elite army. And then so you go, okay, there's not. If you don't take the points down, you then have to change the data sheet. And then what do you do to the data sheet? Do you give them 2 wounds and give Terminators 3? Do you put their toughness up? You know, there's like, and then you go, well, what do you do with Primaris if you do that to Space Marines? Do Primaris go up to 3 wounds?
But then that goes on to crosses over to other armies, right? And then you've just got to balance it across the board, and then you just pretty much have to rewrite the whole thing.
Yeah, the Meganogs, they go up to 3 wounds.
Because the Space Marines are your level playing field, right?
Yeah, that's what they base.
That's
what they base everything off of Space Marines. But that's the point at the minute. Their base unit that they've written the rules around and all the codexes. They've obviously done a bit of the codex creep in some of them, but their base unit is no longer what it should be. So then can they just change their base unit across the board? Because obviously that would go to all of the Chaos. That would go Chaos Space Marines. That would go to Space Wolves, Dark Angels, Blood Angels, all of that. That would sort a lot of armies. And then just change one thing. See how it goes. Change it in chapter approved. Give them all an extra toughness or an extra wound. Keep the points the same. See what happens. Nick's big FAQ, which is only in March. It's not a million miles away. Change it again if it needs changing. Change some points. They've got to keep changing it and keep updating it to balance it. If they want a balanced game.
I can't see them changing any data card.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have said that. I've emailed them.
No, but don't get me wrong. The thing is, right? We may play a few tournaments and look at things from a competitive side from time to time, but it'd be nice to maybe look at the game from your usual Joe blogs, going into the Games Workshop store and just playing a normal game, right?
Yeah.
Because we've gone, I'm not saying I'm no expert, but we've kind of gone beyond that phase of the game and how we play the game. You know, we are a bunch of mates who play each other, but we all play to win, right? So it would be nice to see it from a child's eyes.
Yeah.
For perspective,
I think it's hard because they've done things in the big FAQ too, where they've sort of nerfed the Blood Angel stratagem to help a list that was a sort of a list that had Imperial Guard, Knight, and Blood Angel Smash Captains, but then everyone's like, well, they've hurt the Blood Angel players that are just having an everyday game as a Blood Angel army, and it's that thing of trying to balance for them. It's trying to keep the everyday player happy and not nerfing their army into the ground, because 2 competitive players have found a loophole to get this really, really hyper competitive army to then to sort of break the game as such, and they need to find a way to stop that, because the competitive scene is probably where the balancing happens the most, because people on the competitive scene are the ones that find the loopholes, that find the ways to play armies, and
all that means
different synergies.
All that means, like you say, that's going to affect the casual player more, because the army they just want to play casually and enjoy becomes useless. Whereas the competitive players, right, okay, they've nerfed that one, let's get rid of that and let's move on to the next army. And what can we do with this craft world? What can we do with this Orkan?
And that is exactly what competitive, the hyper competitive players will do. As soon as GW come out of a rule to nerf an army, or a list, should we say, not an army, to nerf a list, they will then go, right, that list's been nerfed, let's go and find the next list, let's have a look at the Orks Codex, see what we can do with that, let's have a look at the Space Wolf Codex, because that's just come out, see what we can take from that Codex. 6-inch Heroic Intervention, let's have a Supreme Command attachment with Bjorn, and...
Yeah, but this is another thing, right? Where do Orks get allies from? Who and what faction do they ally up with in a competitive scene? So now they're at a detriment already.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't believe soup's a problem, because it seems to work from a Sigmar point of view. You know, you've got your Death faction, your Chaos, your Alliance. You know, that works. Whereas in 40k, don't get me wrong, I've been off the Sigmar scene for a long time, but I don't know whether that's causing problems, or the way the game's played. But from a 40k perspective, you're getting the likes of the Imperial armies who are able to ally to each other, which is being able to benefit strong armies, but by providing, like, for example, the Imperial Guard battalion, just easy command points. And yes, they have addressed the farming issue on the command points, but still, to have such a cheap extra 5 command points to an army which wouldn't have any necessarily.
But again, this is another thing that sort of annoys me a little bit. So because of people taking Imperial Guard detachments, which loads of people are doing it in the competitive scene because it's an easy way to get a load of command points.
Yeah.
It still hasn't really fixed that problem, because you can still get loads of command points from taking Imperial Guard. You can still get 15 command points from taking Imperial Guard. You just take a brigade, and that's cheap. Whereas me playing Necrons in your everyday situation, or even if I wanted to take them to a tournament, well, Hyperlogical Strategist, actually, when you take that, you have to play Saltec, which then you can't use other dynasties which are quite good. So I'm then being crippled, because Necrons is very hard to get command points for Necrons, because you want to maximise every squad because of reanimation protocols. So therefore, you're not taking cheap battalions or brigades, because everything's max size. So therefore, you're then only being able to get one command point back per battle round, which then means that you're probably going to spend your command points in the first 3 turns anyway. So you're probably going to get a maximum 3 back. You then have to look at, like what I said is, okay, if they want to do a maximum of 5 command points back with one of these Warlord traits, relics, whatever it is, then I think they should just say you get a maximum of 5. However quick you get that, you roll every time, you get a maximum of 5 command points back. Because otherwise, I mean, what they've effectively done is everyone's just gone, yeah, I'm not going to bother with that trait anymore. So no one's now taking... Yeah. Well, they haven't nerfed it as such. They've just ridden out of the game. And don't get me wrong, I think it is a beta rule. But
it goes back to the lore as well. Don't get me wrong, the soup works in the lore, right? Whenever you see any planetary defences or any, fights going on in the Heresy, you all see regiments fighting alongside Space Marines and all sorts. So it fits in with the lore, and it's very convenient from a competitive perspective. But I wouldn't, going into the books and the history and whatever, you wouldn't see or hear of a Imperial Guardian giving advice or a strategy to a Space Marine.
No.
A Space Marine sees a Guardsman as an ally, but well below them, right?
Yeah.
So that comes into play with sharing stratagems and sharing command points.
Yeah.
So I feel if you were to have a battalion of Imperial Guard, then you'd either decide whether the 3 additional bonus command points go to either your Blood Angels or your Imperial Guard, but the 5 battalion command points should stay within the Imperial Guard.
Yeah, which is a great idea. I think people have said that it's quite hard to then know which pile your command points are in and that sort of thing. The other thing is to make it as simple as you can, which I've seen a few people saying it, is whoever your Warlord is. So you get as many command points as from all your detachments, you get all them command points. Mm-hmm. Then whoever your Warlord is, you can only use their stratagems and you can only use their relics and Warlord traits. So that means if your Imperial Guard is your Warlord, you can only use their stratagems. If your Knight is your Warlord, you can only use their stratagems.
You would argue that's still not going to change anything, though, is it? Because your Warlord, you're the focus of your army. You're only taking the Imperial Guard to
get command
points.
Yeah.
Your Warlord is always going to be the leader of the foreshore one team.
Yeah.
So it's still going to leave you in the same position, isn't it?
No, not necessarily, because you can't then use a variety of different... so, for instance, if you were to say Knights, you couldn't then use the farm, because Knights don't have that. Right, so you couldn't then farm command points. But also, you could then go, one step further and then you could say, okay, whoever the bulk of your points are, that has to be where your warlord is. Do you know what I mean? So if you were taking a brigade of Imperial Guard, I'm imagining that would be the bulk of your points. Probably not.
Probably not. Yeah, probably not.
But it should be. And then I think, hopefully then it should try and sort some of that out. And what it does, I feel, is that allows you to still, like Neil was saying, you've still got that fluff. You should still be able to take a knight with an Imperial Guardist. You should still be able to take a knight with a Space Marine list, because that is what, generally, that's what it's about. So you've still got that ability to take allies, but you're not getting massive advantages from it. And it doesn't hurt the everyday player, because you're not having to nerf stuff, because you've nerfed the suit, which is what they should have done. I think, people are saying from a monetary point of view, GW don't want to take away or do anything to the suit, because they want the competitive players to keep... They'll nerf that one, and then the competitive players will go and find another one, and they'll buy all the models for that, and then they'll nerf that one, and then they'll go and buy models for other... But
Games Workshop, they run their own tournaments, don't they?
They haven't done for a long time. But
recently they have.
Yeah.
But, it would almost make sense for them to have not a separate rule set, but their tournament their tournament criteria they run for their tournaments, and just say, this is our competitive. This FAQ thing relates to your competitive scene, and this is your casual scene. I know that wouldn't be feasible, because the amount of work it takes just release a codex and release a FAQ and
a set of rules for
exactly.
I think the big thing is as we're talking about this, when I was talking about the hyperlogical strategist being able to farm, now I don't have to play the rule that GW has just put out. Like, I can carry on playing the hyperlogical strategist as long as my opponent is okay with it. The old way. The old way. But it's that thing is, I've always wanted to play it.
# watch out for Pat.
I've always wanted to play the game how they've written the rules, and if they've changed the rule, I feel like I want to play it because they've changed it to balance it. So I want to play it because I want to play Warhammer 40,000 as balanced as I can.
You don't want to play a broken game, do you?
No, unless I'm playing like some cool narrative mission where I've got like, 3 custodians against a massive horde of nids and I win.
But it's like we just had a game of ITC rules this evening.
Yeah.
And, even though I lost, it was just an enjoyable format. The way they've set up the rules and the secondary objectives, it's just great. And I think it just complements what the current rule set is. Don't get me wrong, like the beta rules in play do have a certain impact of how the game can turn out.
Yep.
I did, for the first time, try the new stratagem that was available.
Yeah, the cover save.
The cover save, which didn't really get...
I don't think it's worth 2 command points.
The first turn when you start second.
When you start second, it's 2 command points, and
it's quite rich, isn't it? 2 command points.
I think it would be good if you were playing Orks or something like that, where you've got a lot of units sitting out that you can't get in cover. Great. But to be honest, other than that, it might have helped the repulsors a little bit. They got like a +1 to their cover save. Like, if it was a 5 up instead of 6 up. So it does help, don't get me wrong. I'm just not sure it's worth 2 command points. I think they could have made it 1 command point, because I think that the advantage of going first is so outweighs the advantage of going second. There isn't really an advantage of going second, apart from getting on objective points and stuff like that. You can, and also if in ITC particularly, if you've killed 1 unit, you've got to try and kill 2 units, so you've got a target of how to kill to get points. So there is that advantage, but in terms of going first, it is a huge advantage, especially if you've got a lot of firepower. You can then take out like a 300 point model, and you're 300 points down from the get go. And that's big.
Yeah, but then it does. You've got. I just took for granted. Given I had 4 or 5 drops.
Yeah.
I took for granted I was potentially more likely going to get the first turn, which I didn't.
No.
By all means, I deployed assuming I'd get the first turn.
Yeah.
So that goes down to me being naive and assuming that I'd have first turn.
Yeah.
And that, I fell short again on that when I played the first game in the last tournament. I set my Hive Tyrants right up on the front line, assuming I'd get the first turn. I didn't. They were the first targets, priority targets, and there goes the spine of my army, right?
Yeah, big gamble.
It's a big loss. So, you know, there is something to be said about being prepared to possibly go second. Deploying as though you potentially could go
I mean,
second.
I was like today, I did deploy as if I was going to go second because I 100% thought I was going to be going second. And, you know, my first turn wasn't amazing by any stretch of imagination. I'd done a bit of damage to one of the repulsors, but it wasn't an amazing first turn because if I had known that I was going to go, if I knew I was going to go first, then I would have deployed differently because I would have deployed further up. I'd have tried to get more stuff in and that sort of thing. But yeah, I think the FAQ was okay for the moment. I think there's a lot of things that have got to be fixed, and I think everyone's got very high hopes for Chapter Approved.
I think the other thing to put in perspective is though, we've come from 7th edition, which just got more and more and more complicated with FAQs and errata and all that sort of stuff, didn't it? At the very least, since we've had the first rule set, we've had 2 FAQs and 1 chapter approved, and every time there's been some positives come out of everything that's happened so far. There has been some questionable things. There was a lot of talk when Deep Strike changed initially and all that sort of stuff. But the reality is Games Workshop have put in place a system where they can try and fix things a lot more effectively than they ever have done before, and they're giving the community an opportunity to put into that. So at the same time as what we're saying, this is broken, that's broken, they really need to do X, Y, Z. At the same time, they're doing something.
Oh, by all means,
it's a lot better than we've ever had before, isn't it, to be fair? Where most of us in our group are fairly new players. 8th edition is pretty much the only edition we've played since probably,
since we were about
3rd or 4th edition, if that. You know,
3rd edition was my last time I played.
They're very fortunate in that perspective. But, there's no doubt in all the hard work and, from the marketing, the development perspective, just from the gaming and the products, we were just talking about, while we were eating at McDonald's earlier, cardboard dreadnoughts.
Yeah.
Look at them now. Just the model, the whole...
we're talking about Gal School Fracker. You
Exactly.
think the model, everyone complains about the current model needing an update, but you look at the previous one to that.
Yeah,
and
the models are, they are brilliant. And, like we said about the Orks earlier, like not being quite Ork enough, but when you look at the actual models, they are brilliant.
Well,
they're amazing
that's
models.
What sets them apart from every other hobby, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There's plenty of them out there.
Yeah. The GW models are really, really nice. So we're going to wrap that up. I think Chapter Approved is the big next step for 8th edition 40k.
No. The Ork Codex.
Oh, sorry. The Ork Codex is the big next step for Warhammer 40k. And I think Chapter Approved coming is going to be really... it's going to be a massive change. I think it's going to be a massive change to 8th edition. I think there's going to be a lot of balancing coming from it from points changes because they've done 0 points changes in the big FAQ too. So I think that's going to be huge. But let us know your thoughts on what you think about the Orks, about the Space Marines, about all of these issues and
anything you want, really, isn't it? Yeah, let us know what you think about anything to do with the hobby at the moment.
Yeah. So thanks for listening to another Warhammer Chatter, and we will see you in the next one.
Ciao.